Hello, I am back. I took a week off. I was in Jakarta, but now I'm back going to pester you and annoy you. The topic today is women works while men stay at home. I am Laila White from Singapore. If I'm glad that you guys have the ability to sit through my talk show, listen to what we all have to say and exchange ideas. If you like this show, please share it or you are welcome to comment or give me any ideas as we go along. I have with me Joe Potter and also Bill Calhoun to discuss this new trend or new life or phase that we are facing now in 2017. So I will welcome Joe first. Joe, come up, and you are a regular guest of mine who always so graciously would want to come on even it's last minute.
Thank you very much, Lila. You know, when you say it, it sounds like I have nothing better to do. It's only because you're a very good friend of mine that I make the time for you.
I know you're very busy, and I'm very, very grateful. And I also want to say thank you to Bill, who always I have to pester him every week, and every time we come on board, there's something wrong with the setup. Nothing. It goes smoothly when it's his show, but when it comes to mine, it's always a mess up. So, Bill, please come in and say hello.
Hello, folks. And actually, it's my bad, because I actually do it deliberately. I talk to the technology and I says, when Laila gets here, just really mess up, make her feel guilty. So with that, I bring her back.
Not true. Joe, let's talk about this. What's happening more and more now that women are going out to work and men are staying home, looking after the household. So can you give us your insight to what's happening now? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can give insight to why I think it's going on, and I have my own personal experience about that. But I think that a lot of it is due to, women being encouraged to get in the workforce. There are a lot of places in the world these days that if women don't go to the workforce, then they're going to have a really big problem with work shortages. For example, like South Korea, if they don't get women in the workforce, they're going to have some very serious problems. And I think it's also what society has taught us lately, that, women are, can work beyond being in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant, as maybe they were in the 50s and 60s. So I think that these components lend towards women having their own careers and wanting to have this sort of have it all ideal perception. But the problem is that when you decide specifically to have a family, or if you decide to become an expat, not all spouses, and this goes for men and women, not all spouses can work in the countries. Not all, not everyone has an opportunity to have dual careers when you're in a family, and it's just it's normal, I think, from a dynamic in the relationship that someone, especially if you're staying at home, it could be, again, because you can't work because you're an expat, could be because, there's just too much going on with other projects at home that need to be handled. It could be kids, it could be family that needs to be taken care of. And I think that it's important to understand that it can go both ways, like men and women. Somebody ends up deferring their career and ends up staying at home, and sometimes it's men.
Yeah. So I see it more and more happening in a developed country, but this has been happening in rural parts or countries that are not so advanced, like for example Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, where the women do go out and to other countries and work as nurses, and go to the workforce while the men stay home. And there's so many, it's such a common story. So I think now that it has come to countries that are well developed, the equality also, we as women, we've always worked towards equality. Is that one of the reasons why? And then on the other side, also, I want to discuss about how women now we work very hard for equality. Should we stop bitching if the man wants to stay home? Because we work so hard to want to be equal, right?
So you're saying, like, should we stop bitching if the man wants to stay home? What do you mean by that?
For example, like for example, if we have strived so hard to be equal, and the man have always in the past have looked up, the role was to look after a household and the women. So now that women are more educated and they want to exercise their rights and work, so now men are saying, okay, so now we decide that we do not want to work. You look after us. So how is it a welcoming what do you call it? Welcoming change? Should we welcome the change?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I had my own personal experience about that, where I was involved in a relationship where I am the breadwinner, the career woman, and at that time, my partner was staying at home, with the children. And I can say that, on a general, like, and taking my own personal experience out of it, yes, I think that men absolutely are entitled to want to do that, should be allowed to do that if the financial feasibility is there. But it has to also be that, like, that they do their part. Like, sometimes I think that I personally think a stay-at-home parent, mother, father, whatever, is one of the toughest jobs out there. You are a household manager, you're a chef, you're a scheduler, you're doing like all the activities. It is, and it's 24/7. It is tough. And so as long as people, men specifically, get into it understanding that, hey, this is a tough job, that this is what's going to be required of me in order to do it, then yeah, knock yourself out. And I think as women, to be out there and working in careers and everything else, to have a spouse at home to come and take care of us and take care of everything else so we can just go to work, who wouldn't welcome that?
So hang on, Bill is drawing the drapes, multitasking at the same time. So, but is it safe to say that we women, as much as we want to be equal, we are both genders are built differently. We tend, I mean, I speak for myself, I can't speak for anybody else. For me, even though there's a certain, I feel very uncomfortable if I'm doing it anyways, I'm supporting my children 100% myself. But for me, even if you have a job as you work, as a McDonald's or whatever, I still have that bit of respect for you than just staying home. And in Asia, we're very lucky because we have helpers. We can employ helpers. So is it safe to say that we are emotional creatures, right? We are not 100% very realistic or very pragmatic and say, okay, I go to work, you stay home. Do you feel that way about that the same way, or you feel differently?
I feel differently. I feel like that stay-at-home parent is one of the toughest jobs you could ever do. And I have massive respect for women and for men, and even more so for men, because it's not a chosen sort of profession or a chosen path. I think it's a lot tougher for men to do that because, you decide to take care of your 6-month-old baby and you go down the park and all the stay-at-home moms are there. There's you're probably the only stay-at-home dad in the place. So you sort of feel segregated and left out. So I have a massive amount of respect because, it's not just staying at home. There's a lot of work that's done to that. And if it's done well and it's done in the capacity that I think as women do it and men want to take that on, I have a lot of respect for guys who want to do that. A lot of respect for them.
No, I think what you say is absolutely correct. If they are a stay-at-home parent, whether it's men or women, if they are looking after the family, that's a different story. But what I'm talking about are men that just stay home and there's no children involved, just men that stays home while the women work. So I'm not here to speak about other people's relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about.
So, but even when even when you have that, you have like a stay-at-home husband or a stay-at-home partner that doesn't have any children, there's still household duties, even with maids and everything else. There's like events to organize. And truthfully, it depends on your wants and desires. Meaning, like if there, I have no problem if there was if I would still come home and everything was done and I was taken care of, my needs were taken care of. He went to the gym every day and looked great. Like, it would be okay with me. I wouldn't have any issue with that. And as long as from a financial standpoint that we could do well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that, for women to accept that it's okay for them to do, I think you're absolutely right. There has to be sort of if you want to be equals and you want to be treated like one, you got to let guys have that equality as well.
Right. So now that we've talked, I forgotten about Bill, who's very busy. So Bill, what's your input on this? So he's busy moving furniture around and stuff while we're talking.
Okay. Hi. What's the question? Which part of the question? Okay, because I'm literally I am moving furniture around and stuff like maybe that's part of it, right? Because I'm moving furniture around because I'm a stay at office tech guy.
So what are your views on men that stay at home men while women work? We are talking about the ones that decide with no children involved.
Well, I think it depends on the nature of the job. For example, this is my office, and this is sort of like my stay-at-home office. So I think with technology nowadays, anyone can stay at home. So I think before, whereas if you're looking at a job that's labor intensive, where individuals had to actually go out to work, that was something that there was a big differentiation between that. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, because of technology, a lot of people are either working at home, whether or not that be male or female, or they're continuing their work when they come home. And so I don't see it as a big problem. What I find as a big problem is if someone, and I think Joe tapped on this a little bit earlier, as long as both people are, let's say, for example, if you're trying to keep income into the house, yes, then I think it's important for both people to do whatever they can in order to create that income, whether or not you're staying at home doing work or whether or not you're going out and doing work. I think the issue for me is if a man is staying at home, is that he's providing some kind of resourceful contribution to the family. And if that family is just two people. So if they're staying at home and doing like I was doing and moving furniture around and making sure the technical stuff works, then that's great. Okay?
No, what I'm talking about stay home is not bringing any income. So it's not just staying home doing work from home. Mm-hmm. So my question is, how do you feel about men that women, while they go out and work and bring the income in, while men doesn't provide any income or they're just basically a house husband? That's my point.
Okay, well, let's turn it around.
Right.
Typically, when women stay home,
right,
they were typically they were taking care of the children. So right. Are you suggesting that with a family or without a family?
Without the family.
Without a family.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's what I was trying to get. I mean, if you're a house husband and you take care and you do your duties, and if your wife, like Joe was saying, if you're an expatriate, certain rules and regulation of your permit, right, work permit, don't allow the husband to work, then the husband has to look after the family. That's different. But if you don't have any children and you just stay at home and you don't bring any income, so that's my whole point of this.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, unless, of course, the husband is, giving the wife spa treatments every time she comes back, then what's the point? I mean, what is a person doing? They're just sitting around.
Yeah, but watching. Wait a minute. Wait. So, like, for example, I knew a lot of expat people that were couples, married, and did not. The husband was, gone to work and takes the wife with him, and the wife can't work. So, like, I get that it sucks for her too, right? But like
Yes, absolutely.
That's feasible, and there's still things that you can do to make your spouse or your partner feel like you're contributing, whether that be organizing things in the house, or cooking dinners, or making sure that the person who's working's life is comfortable. It doesn't always have to be just staying home and doing nothing. I think that if we all stayed home and like didn't have jobs, and I'm sure we would all still be pretty busy people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And that's what I meant by spa treatments. I mean, when the wife comes home, if you're giving spa treatments and massages, then, hey, that's a contribution to whatever rules that you set. Or if someone is furthering their education, for example, they're studying for something, they're doing something that contributes to life, for God's sake, whether or not that's male or female. If a woman's staying at home and she's not doing anything, they come back and, the same breakfast dishes are there, and the guy or the woman has not cleaned that up. Well, then that sucks. Yeah, right. Totally agree. There has to be, and as you mentioned, Joe, there was a time where we had our farms, right? People had farms, and their house, they would just come back and forth from the farm. And if the harvest it was done, right? Well, then what did they do inside their house? Okay, they educated themselves. They learned to read. There's something productive. I think we have a responsibility as human beings in order to further the human species by doing something instead of being like a big lump on a log.
No, I agree. That I agree with. I mean, and I think that from just from humanity, get in the picture.
The camera's okay. The lens is too small. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
I think from general humanity, we all need to have some kind of work, whether it be self-fulfillment, some kind of progress. Because when we're not tethered to something like that, we sort of like just become a little bit more in free fall, and I don't think that's actually good for anyone.
Yeah. But I think that I also want to touch, because it's all intertwined together. As we advance as women, our expectation becomes higher, in a sense that we still require we demand equality among the men and women. And I speak about household itself. I know a few people that the wives was and still is a stay-home mom, look after the kids, do everything. I mean, it's the hardest bloody job in the world. I know it, and I'm so glad that I got out of it. No, really, no, seriously. But then their husband works long hours, and when they come, they demand the equality, like 50%. So I think as people, especially as women, if you demand 50%, is ultimately you're going to be screwed, because there's no such thing as 50-50. Men picking up their socks is a gesture of they doing something. For them, it's, expecting for them to do 50-50 is ridiculous. So I think that's where the equality balance that we demand in a household is a bit screwed up. It's never 50-50. It could be 60 one day, 40 the other person, but expecting every day 50-50 is ridiculous.
I think that there's give and take, and that sometimes is, like you said, 60-40, 30-70. And the thing is that that's even more so required when two people are working. When two people are out and you come home, and you got to create a balance at home of getting everything done as well. You pay the bills, he does a little bit of the gardening, like whatever it might be. Like there's always like definitive roles that I think we somehow get involved. Like he takes out the garbage, whatever it is. Like we sort of like, and those are our contributions that we end up making when it's dual income, no kids, right? But I think it's a lot different when you've got one spouse working at home or not working and staying at home. And then you've got somebody else out there working. Like I wouldn't expect that if being in that circumstance that I can just throw my socks anywhere I want, and my spouse is going to pick them up. I expect my maid to go pick them up.
True. true. But it's
but
interesting because I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead. I cut you off. Sorry.
no. I'm just saying, like, you don't want to treat that person, and truthfully, I don't do that at home anyway. There's a bin that my laundry bin that I put them in anyway. But I'm just saying, like, you don't want to treat them like your servant, or like, there's still an amount of respect that, yeah. So.
But it's interesting because recently I met a couple of women and who are, big names in the industry, and they've worked very hard to get there. And their husbands stay at home husbands. One of them, the husband's working, but part-time working, but it's not like a 9 to 5 job. So it's just basically, doing bits and pieces, and comes back, and she comes home and she's tired, and he tells her about his day, how wonderful it is. He goes to the park, I met so and so. So this, and then she comes home and she goes like, screw this, I'm fucking exhausted, and you had a wonderful day. But my thinking is this: do you think that men ever say that when they are the breadwinners, when they come home, and then we say, oh, we went to a tea party today? And do you think that? I'm sure it does, right? It's a stupid question. Let's ask this from Bill.
Okay, what's the question?
Oh my God.
Okay, do I think that?
Do men do that? I mean, it's better for me to ask you than Joe, right? So this couple, the wife works in the office, comes
Right.
back, and then the husband is saying, oh, I met so and so at the park today. I had a great time. I was doing this, training somebody, and then the wife go like, fuck this, I worked so hard, and you had an easy life. Basically, she's
Right.
resentful about the easy life.
Right.
Do men, you think that? I know you're not married, but do men ever say things like that? Does it ever? I'm sure it crossed their mind.
It's a great question, and I don't know, only because men don't share things like that with me, and I'm not married. But here is the sense that I get when I do discuss things with men, and that is that we have a tendency, if it's that situation, we have a tendency to talk about the things that we do, not so much about the things that our wives do. And what I mean by that is that in a man's circle, we're very concerned about the things that we do. And it's interesting because I notice this even when I watch male broadcasts of news programs. We have this tendency, I'm not saying that women don't do it as well, but I'm saying that it predominates in men, is we have this tendency to want to let the world know what it is that we're doing and what it is that we're thinking. We don't typically say, oh, poor me, that type of thing. Or actually, let me kind of like move back a bit. And I'm not going to mention the person's name, but
who is it?
No, okay. But this individual, he is a friend of mine, and the one thing that comes up over and over and over again is money. They say, my wife has spent this, my wife has done this with the money, she's done this, she has no sense at all of, how to maintain money, and I wouldn't have done it that way. And it always comes down to that point where I wouldn't have done it this way, this is what she should have done. I would have done it like this. And so that's typically what it is. It doesn't usually go to the point of, you know what, when I get home, my wife doesn't give me, it's usually like anytime, anywhere, this is what's going on. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't just one person, it was 2 people. And that this just happened recently. Does that answer your question, kind of, sort of?
Sort of.
I'd like to chime in because, I've been in role reversal. And so I think I have a very good understanding of, how sometimes guys feel when it comes to their wives, like just, not, having a good day. Truthfully, is that and this is my perception, is that I think as long as you're happy in what you're doing, then you're happy for the person that's doing their thing. So like if you're happy working and you're happy, and financially it's okay, then, you don't really care. Like it's great. I think it's when it becomes stressful and when it becomes, with money matters, or decision-making processes that, they're like, well, why'd you go out and get a $12,000 fridge when we could have got one for 2? Like it's stuff like that I think make people that are working a little bit irate or out of sorts, because that's calling to what they're providing, and sometimes not being fiscally responsible, or not sort of like sort of taking their working for granted. I think that's what it really equates to. It's not like that you spent the money. It's like you're sort of taking me for granted by doing this and maybe not consulting with me first, or so I think it's more about, I don't really think it's a matter of I want to live the easy life. It's more like I don't want to be taken for granted.
Yeah. But you're a very rare individual, I must say. Like for me, I was forced into what do you call it? Manhood.
Well, I think what Joe is saying is she's saying she's going to reverse the roles in just a bit. So she's talking about it from a male standpoint. Is that right, Joe?
No. What I'm saying about Joe is that she's very precise and very balanced in how she perceives this subject, right? But I'm forced into becoming a man itself in my household. But to share with you guys, there are a lot of women that are working, and sometimes they what do you call it? They have a better income than the man. So no matter what it is, there is a certain resentment with the women that are supporting the man. So that is it's very rare to hear women like Joe, and I speak the same, of course. Like I cannot support men, which I'm doing anyways by force, right? Because I'm supporting my children. But I can't see myself as an individual to look after a man. I still see a man as a man that has to be slightly more smarter than I am, more powerful than I am. But not that I'm going to live off him. That's not what I'm saying. But I seem to lose respect for a man that stays home and not look, and I'm above him. I mean, that's my own perception. And I've come across a lot of women who has the same resentment. You look.
I'm just listening. Go ahead. Okay.
So
I'm really listening, because last time you rated me because I didn't know the question.
Oh, that was
so I'm here. Okay. So that was today. Okay. So I'm really listening, and I understood everything you say, and I didn't hear a question there.
There's no question.
Good.
So do you? I'm sure you have friends that discussing this with you, and I'm sure you are the level-headed ones that say, give them a different point of view. So what I'm trying to get is, are you aware that a lot of women out there talking about this subject and are resentful?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I can tell you that, I know that I'm an anomaly, that I am, somewhat of I represent very, very small population of women that take on this view. I think that the majority of women feel like you do. I think that I have many girlfriends that, just they wouldn't even consider dating somebody who wouldn't be someone of their equal or greater than. And but I think that's the difference in me, is that I don't really equate a person's value to what they do. A person's value is how they treat me, and a person's value is to how they make my life better. Now, some women equate that to how much money you can make so we can have a good life together. But I'm just so independent that that's not something that's not on the top of my list. But I'm the exception to the rule. I get that. I really get that.
Yeah. I think these women that I know, we are thrown. I like to put myself inside the category also. We are thrown into being independent, and once it's sometimes independence and power that you get. Sometimes it's very scary, because you realize and you start deducting people that you don't need in your life. For me, I don't need to support another child when I have 2 children. I don't need somebody that doesn't contribute anything in my life, just the same as they don't contribute, that I don't contribute to them in their life. So that's where the independence becomes very scary for me. But having I really want to get into this discussions about women that are resentful and they treat. I mean, if you are resentful towards somebody, then you start treating them badly. So my question is, what can be done? What can these women do? Except for me, it's like very easy. If you're not happy, get out of it, right? So Joe, what can you give me some input on this? What can be done? What does the women need to do to change this mindset, I guess?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the I've always said, if you don't like where you're at, either change your location or change your perspective. So
Right.
it means either you get out, and that's what I did. I mean, I ended up getting out because I didn't like what I was personally going through, or you change your perception and you just say, and it's accepting. Okay, I accept this, and I'm going to look at it in a different way. Maybe he's contributing some other way or fashion or whatnot. But, I think that it's really more a matter of, if, my advice, again, if you don't like it, you have one of two choices. You either have to accept it and change your perception on it, because it's just going to end up driving you crazy. Or if you can't accept it, then move on.
So have you always been this way, or you tend to evolve towards this independence mindset? You can see it on the other side of the men's perspective also.
I think for me, it was definitely, I definitely evolved. I mean, from what's really interesting is that there was a time when I was younger that I was with someone. I was stay-at-home partner, and I was going to school though, part-time, but really just staying home and relying on my partner's income in order to sustain myself. And I think after I did that and realized what control that had over me and how much I didn't enjoy that, and it was probably with the wrong partner to begin with. I evolved to, like, that's never going to happen to me again.
Right.
So from that experience and then becoming very independent, I think that for me it was definitely involvement. But I think that there are some people out there that are just inherently independent.
Right.
My daughter, who's 3 years old, is inherently independent, which is a little bit hard for me.
But do you think that it's getting harder and harder as time passes by, especially in this age, 2017, right? That a household can't be just coming from one income. Let's put aside where there's no working permit allowed, and all that, but just by choice that you as a couple who lives in the same house and you don't contribute to the income. Don't you think that that's a bit sticky situation? Because a household now is very expensive. There's no way somebody can support the whole household unless you are like the top CEO of a company or something. But it depends on what company you're working for too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, it depends on the dynamic of the relationship. It depends on, I think that if you're sort of two middle-class people and it really depends. It depends on what your needs are for both men and women to allow the other partner to stay home or not. But let me say this. I don't think it's a good idea for most people to stay home without having some kind of task. And that's sort of what Bill was saying. Like, I think it's a horrible thing and it's a very slippery slope because everybody thinks it's fantastic and fun and all that other stuff, but it is really damaging to the soul. So
but it's almost acceptable for women to stay home. It's not acceptable for men to stay home. So that's where it goes, haywire. So women, we are. It's okay to have your wife or girlfriend staying home or doing whatever you do on the side of when you stay home. But whenever we mention men stays home, everybody goes like, oh, except for you. You go like, oh, what did he do? But most of them go like, what? What does he do? He stays home. Right. So it's the society also has already benchmarked what the roles of gender has been from the beginning of time. right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's definitely, gender biased towards, women, it being acceptable for women to stay home even if they have no kids or and their spouse is supporting them. But I think it's detrimental even to women. I don't think it's good for anyone to just stay home. I think you have to be productive or your brain just shrivels up and your soul just evaporates. We all have a purpose, and doesn't have to be a grand purpose. Not everybody's going to cure cancer, but we all have something to do in our lives. And I think that just staying home and not doing anything is not productive.
I'll just ring in here a bit. Joe mentioned this earlier. She mentioned about stress of job and income. And it's interesting because if we notice the nature of the conversation in terms of a stay-at-home spouse, it's hinging on economy,
Right?
dollars and cents, and the true nature of family before. And now I don't know because I wasn't back then. I didn't have family, but I would suspect that when there was family, the reason why the woman stayed home was because she was rearing the children. But at the same time, the man was either working very, very close. That means in proximity. If you're farmers, for example, and then the woman would go out and then the man would come in and he would educate his children. So there was some kind of a cohesive bond in educating the children and working the farm. Nowadays, we've lost that. Because as you asked about whether or not it's even possible to have a one income household, and I think that it can be, but and Joe mentioned you either change your location or change your perception. And I think it's very important for us to understand that the crux of all this could be also changing your location. So, for example, if we were living in because we know that Singapore is one of the most expensive cities in the world, and so therefore it obliges one of us, if not two of us, to go out and work. But let's say, for example, that you had a country that you were living in and the income was not dependent upon raising a family or whatnot. You were living where you could actually be happy, where everyone could learn under the same roof. Even if you didn't have children, you could experience certain things that you could go out and work together, but you'd work together to, sow seeds and, grow the farm. And then you would go into town and do these types of things. I think what's happened is we've lost the focus. And that's the reason why this whole contribution thing, it wasn't even a question at a time where it wasn't about getting dollars and cents all the time, because we've lost something. We don't even communicate properly anymore. As Joe is mentioning, as long as you communicate what you need. And it goes back to many of the talks that you've had, Laila, in terms of this communication breakdown. I think that communication breaks down because of the material pursuit that we have. But if you have people that are together, it doesn't matter who stays at home. If you don't have to worry about the external forces that are stressing the situation of the family, if that's making any sense. I just see that it keeps going back to the whole economy thing. And we can make a choice. We can make a choice to where it's not about going out for two people to make enough money. It's about making that overall contribution as individuals. Some people may decide that they want to go out and learn art. Some people may decide they want to stay home and learn art. Some people, I don't know if that makes any sense. That's just what I was hearing.
But I think this subject also brings a reality check for women, in a sense that, we get to see the perspective from a man's side, how they go out and they work and they deal with the outside and come home and deal with a spouse or a partner. But because we are emotional creatures, we tend to have our feelings first, besides thinking of because it's a given. A man goes to work, the breadwinner, you come back, and women, we take care of you. When the roles are reversed, then we go like, you staying home, you don't do shit, so all that, and the resentment starts coming in. So what do you think, Joe?
I think you only get resentment, at least I only get resentment when I was in that experience and I wasn't getting my needs met, or that I wasn't being taken care of, or I didn't feel like there was real contribution being made. I think that's the issue. I think that, and there was many communications and many, many discussions about that. I don't think it's a matter of, I don't think it's a matter of sort of, somebody staying home, I think it's more a matter of that contribution that's made. And if it's not made, then that's where the resentment comes in. It's not that, you like, I'm supporting you and you're just staying at home eating bonbons, which is, sometimes what I think men conjure up when women are staying at home. But the truth is that even women that do end up staying at home, like, they try to get like expat wives that are, trailing spouses. They try to get involved in doing other things, whether it be volunteer, charity work, some kind of contribution to the community. And then also, like, making sure that his clothes are clean, that they're pressed, that she does all the errands, she takes care of everything in the house, and the air cons are serviced. And, that's another job within itself, even when you don't have kids. And, so I think that it goes both ways. If a guy's going to do that, it's definitely something a guy could manage. But if they're not doing anything, I think that's where the resentment comes in.
So what happens if a guy works and then they say they work from home, but it's been years and years and years and don't contribute financially? So where I mean, they say I'm working, right? How do you even rate that?
You don't. I'm sorry, you don't. You don't.
No.
Yeah, you can stay at home and you can be working towards something, an entrepreneurship or whatever, but there's a certain time where if you're not, like, for example, what you're saying, and it's hitting close to home because I just experienced this. So, like, you've got somebody who's working on a business idea and it's going on for like greater than 6 years and they're still not contributing to the...
Are you serious?
Unfortunately, yes, I'm very serious. And they're not contributing to the family and they're not contributing, financially, and they're not able to either get a job or they're not trying. It's like, you know what? It's time for me, it was time to change my location. But I think that, yeah, like, if you're staying at home and you're trying to work towards something, whether it be school or entrepreneurship, or you're just practicing your art that you're going to end up selling in some gallery, that's okay, because it's still a progression. But after a certain period of time, there has to be deadline to it, and say, okay, either if you're not really bringing in some kind of income and you're not contributing to the family, then changes have to be made. What do you think?
I agree. I think what was very interesting. Okay, Joe, let me zip you out of here so I can come into frame. Sorry. We'll be back. Okay. I agree with what Joe is saying. Joe, I take my hat off to you. 6 years. Wow. If they'd have given me 6 years to pass my GE in high school, that would have been great. Right. But the point I'm trying to make is that's the reason why we have grades. And that's the reason why we have exams, in order to test that progression. So if a man is staying at home and he's doing a business and he's saying, yeah, I'll eventually get there, or he's writing a play and he says, yeah, he'll eventually get there, I think we have to have these little road markers, just like we do in high school. Mm-hmm. When we have, you got an F on this exam. Well, it's adding up, right? You got a C, you got an A, but guess what? It doesn't look very good for you in the future. So I think we need to take that into account when we're actually looking at the person who keeps saying it's going to get there someday. We have to find some way of assessing that. Otherwise it just keeps going on for 6 years, and it's like, oh my God, dude, you haven't done anything. So I would encourage anyone in a situation like that, because that's the thing. We got to because men will do that. I know that. I mean, I've never been in a situation like that, but I think it's because I've had to survive. But I know other men who have, what I mean by surviving is being in, across the world. And so I had no choice. Otherwise I'd be back. Right. So I know a lot of men who they talk about their dreams and things, but what I see is that the women, they don't have a guiding rod. In other words, they're not saying, okay, what have you done today? Okay, we're going to mark you up here. Right. They just keep it going. And what'll happen is guys go, no, I got you. Hey, babe, I'm cool. And then it's like 2 years later. So how's that going? Yeah, we're doing fine. We're doing fine. It says, can I see you work? No. This is, it's dear to me, but don't worry. Right. And then it keeps going. So I think it's important for women, and you need to call us on this shit. I mean, you need to say, we're having an exam next week And I want to kind of see like what your client list is about, whether or not you have a sales page or something like that, but they don't. Yeah. And so they're actually inviting this situation that, you know, that just gets into a lot of problems. True, true. You know, all the way along the way. Can you imagine having a guy say, I got to have an exam? Says, yep. And you just bring out your notebook, tell you about, I swear to God, guys, you'll like, okay, I'm going to get this.
No, but that's a good point. I think, you know, as women, we always want to fight for equality, you know, our rights and stuff. You need to have the balls to call it out. I think that's important. I think that's one of the best advice that anybody can give to women, especially, you know. I'm quite fortunate in the sense that I was given the role of I quit. He quit at 18 years ago. So I didn't have the opportunity of saying, let's reassess and look at the report book. So for me, if I look at it now, you know, it's a joke because you know, with my ex is God will provide and all kinds. I mean, it was bluntly a blunt fucking lie in my face. So it was hilarious in the sense that you can't even quote the shit. You can't even say, oh, tomorrow it will not happen. So let's move forward. That's the way it is, right? But there are men, I have to say, I have to speak for the people that I know. It's, you know, we can joke about it. We can have our views about them wanting. I mean, there are some lazy bastards that just likes to stay home and not do shit. But there are men that are trying and they get into depression and do not know how to start and where to go. There are men like that. But they are, the way Bill has said, that they don't talk about the emotions. So they tend to keep it. And then depression goes down lower and lower and they become recluse and they don't seek jobs because of themselves. So have you encountered people like that yourself, Joe?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think that I haven't encountered specifically people about that, but I've heard more about that. And truthfully, I've heard more about it on the women's side. And this is a very common thing here in Singapore where like women come here and don't know what to do. Just like there's not much to do. And then they start drinking in the afternoon. And the next thing you know, like they are they're you know, approaching a drinking problem because that's like they don't have anything else to do. And that's sort of filling that void. And I think that that's something very stereotypical. Like it's not like the norm. I don't want to make it out like that, but I'm sure you've heard about that, haven't you?
No, that's me. No. Joking aside, yes, of course.
Yeah, so
I think people feel lost, no?
What's that?
People feel lost, whether it's men or women, when you put in different.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, men, it's even harder because at least women, we are much more, not just emotional, but we're much more social and we're much more comfortable with, you know, reaching out, even to strangers and saying, hey, I need some help. I'm lonely. I'm this, I'm that. And men, they bottle it up usually inside. They don't have anybody to talk to. And it just become, again, being untethered. It sends you into this free fall. It's not a good place. For men, it's even worse.
True. Would you like to put your 2 cents worth
about men? Okay, come at me because I was so busy doing the lower thirds.
How the men feel.
They bottle up.
You bottle up depression.
Yeah. This I do know. Okay, because I have clients who do the same thing, and what typically happens with men. And Joe is right, and you're right. In terms of women, they're much more comfortable reaching out for help. Men, for some strange reason, they feel like they are responsible for themselves, but they're really not being responsible. They're being very irresponsible by harboring it, and then the excuses come up. So, and this is typically when they start to find other partners to have affairs with. This is typically when they wind up drinking.
They don't have money and they find another partner.
Yeah, you'll see it because the money that's coming into the household. I have clients like this, and I hear this from the female side. And the men will take that and they'll make the same promises. They'll say, we're going to do okay. Just let me, make this business run. And then the next thing you know, they found them at Marina Bay Sands, gambling the money or real estate investments and whatnot. And they says, well, no, it didn't work that time. So he's going to be okay. And I keep hearing this and it's not right. I mean, men will take this and they'll take that materialism, and they'll try to solve their problem instead of reaching out and saying, hey, look, I'm going through a lot of stress. So what they'll do is they'll go out and they'll try to cover it with something superficial. And if, like you said, I mean, if they don't have the income, they will find the income. I mean, look at the loan sharks. Well, I don't think they call them loan sharks here in Singapore, but the people who loan the money.
Money lenders.
Yeah, money lenders.
Bankers.
But it's prevalent. It's prevalent here in terms of the males taking out these money lending situations, driving up credit. I mean, that whole, even though it's a stereotypic saying, is that women control the money and the guy goes out and does the work. Well, you know, I've seen that be the case more often than not, is that the guy will just run through money and they're being very irresponsible. And that's the way that they show that, you know, they're insecure and whatnot. So I just don't get it, but I see it. I see it through my clients all the time.
So I wonder, so I should have gotten a gay couple. I wonder whether they go through the same, like who is bitching or who's staying home.
Of course they do. This is not like, you know, privy to heterosexuals. It's not privy to men, and it's not privy to women. You know, everybody, I think, you know, feels this way. And again, it's not a matter of, you know, like staying home, not staying home. It's really encroaching on being taken for granted or feeling like someone is taking advantage of you. And I think that that's where it you know, sort of gets underneath everybody's skin. And I don't think it has anything to do. There's no difference in relationship dynamic between, you know, a heterosexual or a homosexual couple.
Right.
Maybe it might be just a little bit more catty if it was like.
That's what I was going to say. I was just about to say that. I was just going to correct you.
might be a little bit more. The communication style might be a little bit more curt than. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. Oh my God. So at the end of the day, I think what we are all trying to say is find personal growth first before you even be a couple, because you all need to get your shit on the table before you embark, because it gets complicated. Like I said, as we advance in the world, especially as women, we need to self-check ourselves also where we stand and how we view. So all this bitching about men, I think that we have to be very careful that we don't become what we bitched about. Agree?
Yeah, I mean, I would even take it like a step further. And you know, as far as like, it's very difficult when you start to become a couple with somebody. You know, there's all these like lovely, nice feelings, and you're starting to, you know, really get to know somebody, and over the course of time, there are key discussions that I don't think we have, that we sort of feel, and I feel we should have, and that encroaches on what you're talking about. You know, I mean, we always talk about maybe common denominators, common desires, where you want to live, what do you want to do, like what are the goals in your life, how do they parallel with mine? But I think that like this kind of conversation is definitely something that is needed, and even in greater detail, just to make sure that, you know, couples are on the same page, and this doesn't become an issue for later on.
Yeah, you that's a very that's a great advice. I think that's absolutely necessary when you embark in a relationship. But you know, when you're in a honeymoon state, nobody wants to piss each other off and scare somebody's off, so they don't talk about shit like this. But this is the reality of the world now. We need to talk about this, right?
Yeah, and like, yeah, like that. And I also think that, a little bit off topic, but I also think that people should talk about, before they get married, you know, they obviously talk about having children, but how they want to raise their children, right? Because if you want to raise yours one way and the other one, like, you're going to end up having a very serious problem. So it's really a matter of, you know, like these are the things that you sort of need to talk about, these life expectancies and life goals that you want to achieve. Because, you know, when you're a couple, it's a matter of being you're king and a queen. You're ruling your kingdom, and you want to make sure that the kingdom is really sound, and this is how we're going to rule it together. And, you know, and part of it is the king staying home on the throne, or is he going to go out and like, you know, and go to war. And the same thing with the Queen. So, I mean, I think that you just have to establish these things well before you decide to unite the kingdoms together.
True, very true. Very, very smart, very, very bright, very, very successful. The Joe and the Bill also. So I want to end. I've thought about how I want to end my show every week, if it's possible. So I want to end my show with what are you grateful for today? I think I would like to try to start that trend, because, you know, a lot of people might see this show as a lot of bitching and taboo shit, but we have to address what constant reminder of what we are grateful for. So I'll start with Joe. Please tell me what you are Please tell me what you're grateful for today.
Oh my goodness. Just one thing, or like, is it two or three? What do I have to say?
One.
Overall, I am extraordinarily grateful for my health and all the opportunities that I've had in my life.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill. As he slides.
Okay, I'm gonna take Joe out of here. What am I? First of all, Joe, that sounded like the perfect script for Miss Universe.
You can just go ditto. It's fine.
Ditto. No, actually, I'm not. This is gonna be weird. I had the advantage, Joe, because Laila just came at you and you didn't know what the question was, and I didn't know what the question was going to be either. So I was thinking, going, what the hell am I going to say? But I'm really grateful for my dog.
Yes, Billy.
He's around here somewhere, and I'll tell you why. Not because he's just my dog, but it's interesting. The other day, just to share a story with you, the other day he was suspected, when he was staying with a friend, of getting into a Panadol and taking the Panadol pills. And when a dog does that, what happens is it can override their liver and their kidney, and it just shuts everything down. But the friend didn't know, because the Panadol pills were out. And so what Billy was doing, he was staying there and he was actually going after something else inside the purse, but they didn't know. Okay. And so then what I did, I'm getting to a point here. Okay. And so then what I did was I panicked, because he's my world. I mean, he is the only child that I have. And if you own a dog, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. But what I mean is, if you own a dog and there's no one else around, there are no children around, there are no children that you're putting in education. So if you amplify your children, that's all I have. And so it was panic, because there's nothing I could do. But the other side of it is, I'm grateful for the fact of what I know in the health industry, because I know this and I learned something. And that is what I'm so grateful for, is learning from things that are so simple. Mm-hmm. I realized for the first time that the pharmaceuticals, for example, because my mom died because of pharmaceuticals. And so it hit home with me really hard. And so I'm grateful for the fact that I understand what good things are and what bad things are. Mm-hmm. And grateful for the fact that there is something loving there, even though it's a canine. And he's Billy. And so, gosh, can I just rewind and erase all that and just say,
no,
I'm grateful for my dog, Billy.
No, that's very good. It doesn't matter. It's the personal, you've been grateful for your own personal reasons. So I'm grateful for being able to find myself and stand on my own and look after my kids. So that's it.
Wow.
Hey.
Wow.
No, that's why I'm grateful today. Tomorrow might be a different story. So on that note, Joe, before, do you want to talk about your concert?
Oh yeah, I'm performing at the Esplanade Theater in the Concourse on December 18th and December 19th. The show starts at 7:15 and then another one at 8:15. So I'm playing two sets on December 18th and December 19th. At Esplanade Theater in the Concourse. So it's a free show. It's open. The Esplanade is sponsoring it and putting it on to celebrate kinship and friendship in December.
Oh, I will be your groupie.
You don't know what I ask my groupies to do. Be careful.
Okay, thanks, Joe. On that note, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Thanks, Bill.
You're
welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.